Most people would have stopped the construction the moment they noticed a mistake. I didn't. Instead, I grabbed a lawn chair, poured myself a cup of coffee, and watched my neighbor spend $40,000 building a deck that quietly crossed onto my property. By the time anyone realized the truth, it was already far too late. At first, I assumed Brandon had hired a professional survey company before breaking ground. Most homeowners would, but as the framing grew larger every day, I noticed something strange. The entire deck kept creeping several feet past the original property markers I had installed years ago. Instead of arguing, I walked into my garage and pulled out the certified property survey I had received when I bought the house. The measurements matched perfectly. My neighbor's brand new deck was already sitting several feet inside my land. I could have walked next door and stopped everything that afternoon. Instead, I stayed quiet. If Brandon wanted to spend thousands building on land that wasn't his, I wasn't going to interrupt his expensive mistake. By the end of the week, the framework was finished. Trucks arrived with premium composite decking boards, custom railings, and expensive outdoor lighting. Every delivery made the final bill climb even higher. A few curious neighbors wandered over to admire the project. Everyone complimented Brandon on his beautiful new backyard. I smiled politely, knowing none of them had any idea where the real property line actually was. The following Monday, I scheduled an appointment with a licensed surveyor. I didn't tell Brandon. I simply wanted fresh measurements from an independent professional before making my next move. Within an hour, bright orange flags and fresh survey stakes appeared across both yards. The surveyor double-checked every measurement twice. His expression told me everything before he even spoke. The surveyor handed me the official paperwork and quietly confirmed what I already knew. Nearly one-third of Brandon's expensive deck had been built on my property. Every measurement was documented and legally certified. Only after the last board had been installed did I walk across the yard. Brandon greeted me with a proud smile, expecting a compliment. Instead, I handed him the certified survey and watched the color disappear from his face. Brandon stared at the survey in complete silence. He looked from the paperwork to the deck, then back at me as if expecting me to admit it was a joke. But every official seal, signature, and measurement proved the same thing. His brand new deck had crossed nearly 6 feet onto my property. "This can't be right," Brandon finally muttered. He insisted the contractor had measured everything correctly before construction began. I simply pointed toward the orange survey stakes and reminded him that licensed surveyors don't guess. The construction foreman walked over after hearing the conversation. His confident smile disappeared the moment he studied the survey. Within seconds, he realized his crew had built thousands of dollars worth of work on the wrong side of property line. The foreman admitted they had relied entirely on Brandon's instructions instead of ordering an independent land survey. That single shortcut had turned a routine backyard project into a very expensive legal problem. Brandon immediately offered to buy the small strip of land. To him, writing a check seemed easier than tearing apart a finished $40,000 deck. But that decision was no longer his to make. I thanked him for the offer, but politely declined. My backyard wasn't for sale. I had purchased every inch of that property years earlier, and I had no intention of giving away simply because someone ignored the boundary lines. The next morning, Brandon called the HOA hoping they would somehow fix the situation. Instead, the board members quietly admitted that property boundaries were completely outside their authority. Karen Mitchell read the survey twice before looking directly at Brandon. She calmly explained that the HOA can enforce neighborhood rules, but it couldn't rewrite legal property lines established by the county. For the first time since construction began, Brandon realized he was completely on his own. The contractor blamed the measurements he received. The HOA refused to intervene, and the official survey left no room for argument. I gave Brandon one simple choice: remove every part of the deck that crossed onto my property, or we could let the court decide. After a long silence, he finally understood that ignoring property lines had become the most expensive mistake of his life. Brandon asked for 1 week to figure something out. I agreed without hesitation. Every extra day the deck remained on my land only strengthened my legal position and proved I had acted reasonably throughout the dispute. 3 days later, another survey company arrived. Brandon had hired them hoping the first survey was wrong. After several hours of measurements, they reached exactly the same conclusion. The deck was still sitting on my property. The second surveyor quietly handed Brandon the new report. Without saying much, he simply nodded toward my property line. Brandon lowered his head, realizing there would be no miracle and no different outcome. That evening, Brandon knocked on my front door with a different attitude. Gone was the confidence he had shown during construction. This time, he came with an apology and a request to settle everything peacefully. He admitted he should have ordered a professional survey before building anything. He had trusted assumptions instead of facts, and now those assumptions had cost him tens of thousands of dollars. I appreciated the apology, but the solution remained the same. The section built on my property had to be removed. Personal regret couldn't change legal property lines. A week later, demolition trucks rolled into the neighborhood. The same crew that had proudly built the deck now began carefully dismantling the portion that crossed onto my property. Neighbors gathered once again, but this time no one was admiring the project. Instead, they watched workers undo weeks of expensive construction because one simple survey had been skipped. By the end of the second day, every board that crossed my property line had been removed. Fresh grass seed covered the disturbed soil, and my backyard finally looked the way it should have from the beginning. Brandon spent thousands more repairing the remaining structure to meet building codes. One missed survey had turned a dream backyard into an expensive lesson that the entire neighborhood would remember for years. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another HOA story. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? We'd love to hear from you.